Hello everybody and welcome back to RP-1. Today we are taking another shot at launching a probe to the moon, and if you notice that today is actually a rather short episode, a lot shorter than normal, and that is because I spent quite a lot of time in the testing phase, tweaking and fixing and rebuilding and just trying to get a rocket to work, trying to get our Goldbird Psi satellite particularly to work and fly by the moon, or impact it at the very least. I lessened the amount of fuel that it had, I removed some of the side boosters, I put it in 2s and 3s, I changed the diameter of the top. I did all these different things to try to make an intercept with the moon. I struggled this way for several hours until I remembered one of the helpful commenters. One of you left me a message saying that I indeed could kill my thrust by pressing X. In one of the previous episodes, about a month back, when we first attempted to make a flyby of the moon, and we just didn't stop in time, and with the combination of that tip, I realized that I just needed to disengage MechJeb beforehand to allow myself to have control of the probe yet again. It was with this new revelation that I went and tested the Gold Eagle Psi satellite, that's the most recent, and found out that it indeed would suffice for the mission, and so we're going to throw that out on the launch pad. So, I plan to use all that footage of all my tests and everything, but ultimately, we didn't have to do anything. Just launch the same thing that we built last time. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get that on the launch pad. So, on the 8th of December, 1965, much later than we did in real life, we are getting ready to send our very first probe to the moon. So, we're going to go ahead and highlight it, select it, focus our view on it, because that will come in handy later. Then we're going to open up MechJeb's Ascent Guidance and pull that window down there. There we go. We are going to launch to the target LAN, or LAN, whichever you prefer, and then engage our autopilot, which will time warp us into the appropriate launch window, and then MechJeb will take over on the rest of the flight, because I managed to get a handle, at least on this maneuver. For anything else, we're going to have to do a little more testing. But anyways, once the time warp has stopped, I don't know why, but for some reason it doesn't like to throttle up, and I found that if you just kind of toggle back and forth between the ascent and the PVG settings, it likes to remember what it wants to do. So with that, MechJeb has taken over on the ascent, and we can kind of sit back and watch, and our part in the flight won't happen until much later when we're closer on the approach to the moon. Unfortunately, our launch window was during the nighttime. We could have waited until the next one, but throughout all of our testing, our launch window was during the nighttime, so I felt that our best shot at recreating what we did in our test flight would be to take the same window. So I do try to focus on the brightness and the lights whenever I can in doing my cinematic shots, but I had Planet Shine on for a while, and it was allowing me to see the rocket a lot better, and thusly you can see the rocket a lot better. I actually had light shining on it even through this pitch black darkness, but it really kind of warped the view of the moon, and didn't want that. So unfortunately, we are going to see a little bit of darkness on our flight, but it will all pay off soon. There we go. We're going to skip ahead a little bit because there's not really much to be said about this flight. It's basically what we've done in the past 3 episodes, I believe, but with a little more flair. I like that. So we're going to kind of speed through the actual pushing out our orbit, but as we see here, the Van Allen belt is quite interesting to see. I don't know exactly I don't know much about the Van Allen belt, so to start off with that, just as a disclaimer, but I'm not exactly sure how we got this. I'm assuming because we chose James Van Allen as our scientist, I believe, or chief scientist, and so I assume we gain access to that, but it can be a little distracting at greater distances because it gets very bright, as we can see here. But anyways, we are now burning past our encounter. You might have seen very briefly we had a flyby, and that was our problem in the previous episode, was that we flew well on past it. We weren't able to slow down and catch up with it, but using our RCS and our SAS, being able to point ourselves prograde perfectly and just kind of fine-tune our trajectory was what solved the problem for us. I was so excited when I first was able to get my first flyby. I never did an impact. I never tested an impact. I just tested to see that the flyby would solve the mission, and so I just figured that if it can fly by, then it can hit it. So I decided we were going to start with hitting it first, because we'll probably be able to spend some more time gathering the science later, and I'd like to see what that looked like up close and personal. Couldn't wait. So I skipped forward ahead. It was a rather uneventful flight out to our apoapsis, and once we entered the sphere of influence of the moon, we quickly get our trajectory and see that we are indeed destined for demise. So now we send back some video imagery and we say hello to our new friend. The stunning graphics of RSS Reborn. I can't remember what scale we have our moon textures, but I tried to get as high as I could without melting my computer. But here's the moon. And as you may know, when you time warp, you lose some of the resolution. So I decided to sit here in real time and allow the moon surface to come to me and time warp or fast forward the footage for you, so it's nice and clear. But anyways, everyone, say goodbye to the Gold Eagle Psi satellite. It had done well, overbuilt, over-engineered, didn't need to be this much, this wasteful, this destructive force on the moon, but nonetheless it will serve a valuable purpose. Look at those hills. And with that, we have successfully crashed a probe against the moon, but we're not sure if we had succeeded in the contract until we get out of cinematic mode, and then we can check our contracts. And there we have it. Not only did we get the Impactor, but we actually got the flyby. I was a little bit surprised by that, because I assumed that you had to indeed fly by and come back with the science, but I guess not. So we ended up completing both those contracts. Look at this photo, so great. I don't know how they get those photos. I guess they sent a secondary rocket right behind it, but nonetheless, we gained 2 contracts in one. Astronomers also got to see the spacecraft hit the moon as well as fly by it, so it's good to know that you can kind of combine contracts that way. So I have another one of those rockets in the works, and if you notice at the top, we have a whole mess of science, and I assume that if I send another one right by the moon, this time actually flying by and coming back with the science, I assume we'll get a whole lot more. So I decide to let that rocket build, and we are going to put it out as well. Once again, the takeoff was assisted by MechJev, so it was mostly automated to perfection. However, we did have a slight inclination change somewhere along the lines, and we did not line up with the moon's target land. But through the cutting use of maneuvers, we were able to figure out what direction we would need to point in order to make ourselves a flyby And even though we didn't really have access to my typical methods of autopiloting and activating these maneuvers, realized that it didn't actually need to be perfect. We could just point ourselves in the direction that it needed to be and kind of burn until we get in the general vicinity. So as we see here, our periapsis is getting closer. I'm not really sure why it was flickering. There was a bug somewhere. If anybody knows, if you could please let me know in the comments, I would appreciate it. If this was a one-time bug or if this is a thing. I've never made maneuvers out this far, and I've never been able to kind of like get a close-up view and look at it really. But I decided, rather than messing around too long and potentially just not getting a maneuver at all, I took what I could, time warped out there, and apparently that maneuver was on the second pass. So I had a quick shortness of breath as I flew around Earth, and then came back. I tried to fix it to get myself a nice low pass, but I just didn't have the delta V necessary, the 442 in RCS alone. So I decided to just take what I could, get my high space over the moon science, and call it a day. But we are going to leave the science in, or excuse me, we're going to leave the satellite in space and let it kind of expend all the energy that it has, transmit all the science it can, and maybe we'll revisit later, clearing up the skies. But anyways, that is the episode that we have. I know it was a short one. Sorry about that if you were looking for a little bit longer, but ultimately I spent so many hours just to come back to the point of the rocket was already perfect. I just needed to fly it better. And so by the time I got a successful mission in the bag, it was time to sit down and edit. So unfortunately, it was quite a short episode, but in the next episode, we're going to spend some time, a lot more time in the build process. I'm thinking I might redesign this whole program. We've got access to deep space, avionics, 1960s orbital technology, and 25 more points of science, plus whatever this probe produces. Either way, we're getting closer to my ultimate goal of landing something on the moon. But that is where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more RP-1. If you did, think about subscribing. Drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.